So this open water swimming. So how did you get into it?
So I came back to my hometown in Aluva during the COVID, and and like I showed, there is a beautiful river which flows through the landmass here. And as a kid, I used to swim in the river with neighboring kids, my brother, etc. And but we never used to do scale longer distances. Training for swimming is one of the best exercises you can do. One of the best things you can do to your body. It's an amazing full body exercise. A startup team is very similar to a sports team, right? We chase very aggressive targets. We are in a very competitive environment, and it's important that we are able to work like a sports team. I think all that matters, like you pointed out, is maybe at least in my thinking, it's that everyone is aligned and everyone knows what we are in for. A CEO knows what each person is in for, and we understand their intrinsic motivations. We enable them, we empower them, and they also express themselves. They learn through the process. I think that's very, very important. So if I read something in history in how nations are built, and if I'm trying to write something which correlates that with how startups are built, mostly it'll be a point of view. It won't be, let's say, hey, I read this is 2 or 5 points I learned from it. The daily check-in, like on a daily basis, I'll just look back at how I'm doing, right? It's more of a self-observation. Last year when I just started doing it, the idea was to just look at how are you doing on a daily basis.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of 10x Me podcast. In today's episode, we have Matthew, who's one of the most intentional and thoughtful persons who have come across. He's a SaaS entrepreneur and also a volunteer with SaaSBoomi and a colleague with me there. Welcome, Matthew, to the podcast, and we would love to hear a quick intro from you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Daniel. Really excited to be part of the 10x Me podcast, and happy to share my story in whatever format it is. So to talk about a little bit about myself, I was born and brought up in Kerala, and I ran a startup for the past 6 years, and then now I'm just getting started with the second journey, validating a hypothesis, and it's in the problem discovery phase. I used to be based out of Bangalore for a decade. In 2020, during the COVID, when our team went remote, I moved back to my hometown, Aluva. It's a beautiful home town that I would love to call my home. We got a beautiful river called Periyar that kind of flows through it. Maybe I can show you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice you.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to connect back with nature as well. Pretty peaceful place. But yeah, now I forgot that it was my intro. So I think that is pretty much it. Maybe in this conversation we can explore more about what we want to chat.
Yeah. So so one of the things, like as when we have interacted multiple times, that caught my attention is like you are into open water swimming, then you are also a football coach, and you are a little bit into writing and of course reading as well. And then recently came to know that you also did Kalaripayattu, and you have been pursuing Vipassana as well. So why this multiple interests, and how do you actually pursue this multiple interests and make sense of that? Because see, especially with professionals and entrepreneurs, we keep hearing that, hey, it's one life, you have to focus, right? And in the social media world also, it's like all like you do one thing and then you become the expert at it, right? So how do you look at this?
Yeah, sure. So let me also start with a small disclaimer that I'm only here to share my truth, right? Which can be very far apart from someone else's truth. And even my truth itself, I'm discovering it every day. So it's a work in progress. So what I'll be able to share is what I've understood and assimilated and interpreted today. It could change tomorrow. But very thanks for asking such a good question. So the way I look at it is, I think probably it goes back to what floats each one's boat, right? Or what is the inherent tendency of a person in general. So in my case, I think what I've learned and discovered is that I have this tendency to enjoy learning, enjoying multiple pursuits, and I just find a lot of happiness in that. I also find a lot of happiness in connecting some of these different or seemingly separate, distinct areas and connecting them through interesting correlations. I'll probably share some examples later. So that's how I think about it. That's probably how I'm probably wired, I think. I just love doing it. And so there is this beautiful book written by this author by name David Epstein. He's written this book called Range. The book is called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. It's a beautiful book which talks about, or at least shares this thesis of how when you have exposure to multiple disciplines, or when people with multidisciplinary exposures, how they have this tendency to find creative solutions or creative applications in general. It's a thesis. You can't say that it's 100% true in all cases, but I subscribe to that thesis. I could find a lot of it relatable, and there is also this really amazing definition of creativity by Isaac Asimov. He talks about how creativity is all about the ability to have a reasonable amount of depth in knowledge in, let's say, a field A, and then how you are able to accumulate a similar depth in knowledge in another area B, and how you are able to probably, that puts you in a position where you can use that understanding to come up with a creative solutioning. And I would like to take this opportunity to share a book which I found very interesting, which I also kind of subscribe to from a life thesis point of view. It's called, I could share my screen, give me a moment. It's a book by this author, David Epstein. So this book is all about how it explains or shares this thesis of how generalists could triumph in a specialized world. It talks about how people with multidisciplinary exposure are likely to be more creative in nature, because they could connect dots between these different seemingly distinct or disjoint sets of knowledge, and they are able to come up with very interesting solutioning. It's a nice book. Now, this might not be everyone's truth, but I just seem to relate with this a lot, and I think it has helped me in my journey quite a bit. There is also this amazing article in MIT Technology Review about how do people get new ideas, where Isaac Asimov tries to break down his understanding of how creativity works and how do people get new ideas. So here also he talks in good detail about how when a person has an understanding of domain A, also has an understanding of domain B, they are now able to creatively put that together and then maybe solve a problem in domain C. I'm probably keeping it, I'm dumbing it down too much maybe, but I would certainly encourage folks to go and read this article to understand what I mean to say in good detail. So what I'm trying to say is these are some of the things which I subscribe to, what has, I think, helped me move forward. And so that's the reason why I tend to pursue or learning in different areas, which kind of keeps me going.
So is this similar to this, you would have heard of this T-shaped skill, right? Is it similar to that? For example, let's say, multiple skills, but at the same time, only one skill in which you are like very good at, or this is more like M, multiple M's, right? Wherein you have varied interests, but you have expertise in multiple things, or this is more of, let's say, cross-disciplinary knowledge, coming into picture.
No, that's a good question. I think you could say it's very similar to maybe a T-shaped professional development for a person, right? Or where, you have a reasonable exposure in different pieces, but you also have like a reasonably good depth understanding of one aspect. For example, last 6 years, I've been in the startup world. I've been trying to run a startup and, run a business. So that's something where I spent majority of my time, which means that my understanding of that would be relatively more than maybe open water swimming. Just by virtue of the number of hours I would have spent doing one activity versus the other. But I just wanted to focus a lot more on the horizontal spread in this philosophy rather than the depth. So I think, there is definitely some similarity with the T-shaped marketer or T-shaped professional analogy that we see in the internet.
Okay. So this open water swimming, so how did you get into it?
Uh, Good question. So I came back to my hometown in Aluva, like I said, during the COVID, and like I showed, there is a beautiful river which flows through the landmass here. And as a kid, I used to swim in the river with neighboring kids, my brother, etc. And but we never used to do scale longer distances. So I got to know one day that there is this 4 kilometer swimathon event which is happening, and then I found it very interesting, and I thought it will be a very interesting way to challenge myself, and it all got started there, and yeah, the journey has been beautiful since then. Did 4 kilometer, then did 10 kilometer in the same river basin, and then went for a 10 kilometer event in Krabi, Thailand, in the ocean. Failed to complete it, but amazing experience. Then came back, competed in a 10 kilometer here. So I think more important than probably listing out these milestones, what I would like to highlight is the journey. How it kind of helped me get very, very close to the river body, the water body. How it kind of makes you feel so vulnerable and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. If you have done open water swimming, it's like you are a speck in the whole scheme of things, right? And that has been like amazing. A lot of other learnings too. So that's how it all got started. And what really mattered in this is the journey through which you discover people who go to swim 5:45 in the morning, and then you become friends with them. You discuss how you all what swimming means to them. You learn their perspectives, people from all walks of life, right? So all that has been like amazing. Yeah, very grateful for the experience.
Yeah. So I've come across one of the photos that you've shared of one elderly lady. I think she's 60 plus or something, right? Like, who was doing this long distance swim, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I just wanted to touch upon that, right? So you meet all kinds of people. The only thing is what kind of what's common between you and those people would be that we all love the water and we all want to do long distance swimming, or get into the water and forget everything else and get into the water for maybe a 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer swim. Yeah. So coming back to your previous question about how pursuit of multiple interests or multiple pursuits, how does it help you? I can share maybe a couple of examples there, right? For example, so in swimming, when you do long distance swimming, especially in the ocean, you are...
Okay. And you require special permits, etc. for each of those? Do you have
permits? Good question. I think it's mostly you signing a form telling you are responsible for this action, right?
Okay.
I don't think, and yeah, there might be, if I recall correctly, if you go for international events, maybe they would also want you to be sure that you don't have any critical physical ailment which will prevent you from doing it. But it's mostly you basically giving off the sign off that, hey, I declare that this is fine, this is of my own consent.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd like to take a step back here and then see that you started with, once you're back from Bangalore to Kerala, that's when you had this opportunity to be more committed to this, right? To pursue this, right? And you started with swimming in river, and this went on for how long? Like one couple of years or before? So how long you swam in river before you decided, okay, now let me try ocean, right? And also, what motivated you to? You could have just continued swimming in river, right? Why did you think of doing the ocean bit?
Yeah. So the first question, I think I started embracing open water swimming in 2022. I started preparing for an event in February. So January is when I would have probably started to learn, open water long distance swimming, right? Anything which is probably beyond 1 kilometer. And then, but that event got postponed. May is when I did that 4 kilometer event. But the 10 kilometer ocean swim happened in December of 2022. So it all happened in probably like 6-7 months. So you finish the 4 kilometer and you're like, okay, hey, I would love to push myself now. I want to see what is it to do double or more than double that distance. And then what does it take to swim in the river, in the ocean instead of the river. So I think it was an inherent organic next step. I think for me, at least I thought of it like that. And it also pushes me to train for it, get better at this. And I definitely want to tell you, training for swimming is one of the best exercises you can do. One of the best things you can do to your body. It's an amazing full body exercise. It's very meditative. It leaves you really calm. So all these things. So a lot of things it has helped me with. Not just the training for an event bit, but also so many other things in the life.
Yeah. So at which all points you have attended special coaching? I mean, right from the the beginning of your swimming experience, right? Were you self-taught, and at what point you took some external coaching?
Yeah. So I think I already knew freestyle swimming, which is what you usually do for these kind of events. But my form, you can call it form, or you can call it my style. It was very rudimentary. It was very inefficient. You can think of it like this. So to tell you why efficiency matters in long distance swimming or open water swimming, let's say every stroke, or let's put it like this: for you to do 10 kilometer, you will most likely do around 6,000 to 7,000 strokes. So let's say this is one stroke, right? Now, which means that if you are able to make your basic stroke efficient, if you are able to bring in even 0.01% improvement in that stroke, because you do so many strokes, the effect magnifies, right? And that's why it's important to work on your form, your basic style of swimming, making sure that your body is streamlined, your head is probably in the right angle while you're probably taking your hand up, or there are a lot of these terminologies which I don't want to bring up here. But all that matters. Now, when I started off in the beginning of 2022, I was not aware of all this, but that's the beauty of going to swim with the community, right? You learn small things from talking to people. They'll teach you, they'll correct your form, they'll tell you how you should try something else. And swimming is also something where you end up spending a lot of time swimming, that you get to try out these different improvements or experiments with your form, and you see that working. Something works, something doesn't work. You'll also learn that, okay, at some point, I need a watch now to track my swimming. You'll probably buy that. And so many, that's what I talked about, the journey. The journey is all about, that's where all this learning happens, right? You meet people, you learn from them. Then you see that, okay, now I got to step up. So you'll probably explore and understand there is a coach whom you can learn from. So that sort of an organic journey is what happened with me as well. Yeah.
Okay. Right. And
so go ahead. I'll also want to take you back to the first question you asked, right? How do you learn from one activity? How does it help you in other activities? There is this beautiful example which I wanted to share with you because we talked about ocean swimming. So let me actually share my screen.
Uh-huh.
So this is my my Krabi open water, the Ocean Man swimming event. This is my trail, right? So I started from this green point at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then you can see a small speck of land here. It's a small island. And the original course was to go around the island, which is you'll reach around 5 kilometers here, and then you come back. So the distance was not my problem, because I've done 10 kilometer in the river before going for this event. So I thought that will be enough for me to take a crack at this.
Yeah. This was, how long this was?
This was 10 kilometer.
This is also 10K.
This is a 10. No, 10K. It's 5K one side. You go around that small speck of land, which is an island, and come back. So why I wanted to share this is, sorry, Daniel, you have a question?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. So I'm just trying to get a hold of the magnanimity of this. So, or how much effort it takes, and so one is, okay, this is 5K, and how much time it takes to cover 5K?
Yeah, so 5K swim, you could usually finish it in probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Okay.
A 10 kilometer swim you can take around 4 to 5 hours. depending on other external factors. Yeah. This was like one of the mighty failures I've had in the swimming journey, but it was also because I couldn't finish it. I was swimming so usually I can complete a 10 kilometer maybe 4 to 4.5 hours, but I swam for 4.5 hours and I was still at around 4.5 kilometers on the way to in the total of 10 kilometer, right? So what I wanted to share here is a couple of things, right? One is that lack of understanding of the ocean dynamics. So usually, we were told that the day of the event it would be high tide, and in high tide what happens is there would be an inherent at least so in high tide, how high tide transpires in different parts of the world is very different. It depends on the geography. How I learned about that is again in an entirely different exercise where I learned to do let's say sorry, just give me a moment. Yeah. So how I learned about tides and how it actually transpires in different parts of the world was when I went for an entirely different activity called free diving. But let's not get into that. So here, if you look at it, in this particular geography, when you have a high tide, there are currents which will take you towards the land. So this is very common. So now, what happened in my journey is that by the time when I reached around probably midway, the idea should have been to keep away from the land, because there were two things which were acting against you if you are close to the land. One is there was a tides which were very prominent, and the second is that there were also winds which were blowing towards the hills. So what you see as a on the left side, the green mass, that's a hill. That's a mountainous terrain. So I wasn't aware of this. So one way a swimmer who understands this will be able to tackle this would be to swim a little far away from the land and maybe go like this, right? But I didn't know that. So that's one thing, right? Understanding your terrain, understanding these pieces. That is one learning I got.
This is similar to that. There is this physics problems and everything, right? Wherein you have to shoot a flying thing. You have to. Okay, got it.
No, you're right. It's like that swimming in the hypotenuse to make sure that you actually reach here if there is a current going this way. In fact, I have something else I can, there is that is very common in the rivers. I'll probably share it with you after this. But yeah, so that is the thing, right? And now the second thing is that during swimming, especially in the ocean water, there is this process called sighting which you need to do very constantly. So sighting is this act of checking whether you are on track. When you do open water swimming, when you keep moving so in the usual open water swimming routine, you don't look up and see where you are going. That has to be done very consciously, and that process is called sighting. And it's good to sight maybe for every 10 strokes you can do a sighting, just to see whether you're on the right track. So why I want to share that is because the wind was so strong, you can see from the green part, right? You can see that I'm moving towards the left. And and at this point I was not able to move forward at all. The green means I was swimming so slow that I was not able to move forward. That is because the wind was like not allowing me to go forward there towards the land. So what could have helped us to be conscious of the direction in which you're going? Now, if you look at it, even when you're doing a startup, sighting matters, right? You need to, in the day-to-day grind, it's easy for you to just forget whether you are going in the right direction. Maybe a monthly check-in where you think about, okay, am I actually still working towards that one goal where I really set out, or am I experimenting or validating that experiment in the right way? It's very similar to sighting. So these kind of experiences kind of really, really double down on that learning. And that's what I meant by cross-functional or cross-disciplinary learning, right? Where you learn something from one piece and then you're able to apply it somewhere else. And the third thing I learned is I need to learn to swim faster. So because I've been swimming in the river, I was more comfortable going at a very specific rate or a speed and keeping that speed throughout maybe 10 kilometers. But here the challenge is your first 5 kilometers is going to be extremely hard because it's high tide, which means that you need to really, really give your best there. You need to speeden up your, your strokes per second, for example. or strokes per minute.
Yeah.
But while coming back, that same disadvantage would be your advantage. You'll be able to come back faster because the same tide is going to help you come fast. As long as you're not going to delay it so much that the tides have changed, then it's double problem, right? The tides are difficult or not in your favor in both sides. So these are all learnings you get, and it just definitely. I remember I was feeling very down the next day. I was not. I was disappointed about not being able to complete. But in the grand scheme of things, I think these are the experiences that have taught me a lot more than maybe completing a race or feeling good about it. So I hope this is helpful. Though that way, again, failures. These show you failures, which kind of help you relate with failures that you have maybe in your entrepreneurial journey or in other aspects, and you learn to kind of bounce back. And then in fact, the third learning itself is that swimming in the ocean is very much like in the product market analogy, the market, right? Markets can be unforgiving. You really don't have any control over the market. Yeah. Swimming in the ocean is like that. The ocean shows you how insignificant you are, how small you are. Yeah. All that sense of ego that you carry with you just melts off when you are a tiny speck in the ocean. So all these are learnings I've taken home. I'm very grateful for that, and that's also because going back to that tendency to explore, multiple pursuits. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. When you were mentioning about that, see, you take 7 strokes and then you look up. I mean, you do the sighting, right? It was reminding of the weekly stand-ups and all, and even when you mentioned about see the tides, how it affects your direction, etc. It was again the market conditions. It's very uncertain, and or even this aspect wherein you need to sort of like know the game or know the rules, the applicable rules before actually getting into it, which will help you become more prepared. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so these things were something which was going through my mind when you were mentioning, like how swimming could be, related to your, entrepreneurial journey and everything.
Absolutely. I think all these things teach a lot. Swimming has been like a big teacher for me that way.
Yeah. Interesting.
So there are 2 things in my mind. One is in February of this of 2024, a few of us are planning a 21-kilometer swim in the river. So that's like that'll probably take maybe 12 hours or a little more than that. It's a swimming event to support a charity initiative. So it's all planned by a friend. He's the person who is putting it together. I'm just joining them in the group. Really excited to participate in that, and I'm really excited about the training again, the journey to get there. Now in 2025. I hope to see if I can swim to Sri Lanka. So there is this strait connecting Tamil Nadu and the Sri Lankan shores. So let me just...
So that's in
2025, I hope to do that. It's called the PALK Strait, PALK Strait.
Okay.
So I hope to do that in 2025. Now, there is someone who's planning to kind of organize it. So they also have to figure out the logistics, and when it's probably 6 months before that swim, I'll probably start training for it slowly. So these are, again, nothing is in your hands, right? If this happens, if I'm around, if I'm in a position to swim, I'll probably do that. If not, So that's how I look at it. But that'll be exciting.
Yeah. So right now, like, what's your longest, you can swim for what, 10 kilometers, 15, 20?
Yeah. So 10 is the longest I've done. Yeah. So 21, if I hope I'll be able to do it, that'll become my longest. And if I'm able to go to if I'm able to complete the PALK Strait, that would be, I think, 26 kilometers, again in the ocean, Indian Ocean. So that would be, let's see.
Yeah. So this 21 kilometer, where is that happening? When is that happening? Where is it?
It's not confirmed and planned yet, but it mostly will be in 2025. We'll probably go with the crew from Tamil Nadu. So you can check out the PALK Strait. It basically, I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
It's a strait between the Tamil Nadu and the Jaffna district of Sri Lanka. So so you go to Dhanushkodi,
Yeah.
and then you start from there is what I think. I'll probably need to look at it. Yeah.
Got it. So keeping that in mind, I mean, do you already try to, these days, whenever you are swimming, try to increase from 10 to, let's say, 10.5, 11, like that? Do you practice right now, or how do you do that? Because at the end of the day, you have to reach 21, right? 21 or 26, right?
Yeah. So, Daniel, if I understand your question, are you asking how do I scale this distance factor? How do I train for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, typically for any endurance training, there are these different schools of thought. I'm like a super noob in this whole thing. People who do Ironmans and all, usually they know it better because they have to do a lot of training for it. I've not gone in that path, but there are a lot of these. Ironman is this endurance event where you do, I think, a marathon that is 41.42 kilometers of running, followed by actually the order is you start with 4 kilometers, 3.8 kilometers swim, and then you do I don't recall the exact kilometers you scale in cycling, but you do again a similarly hard cycling bout, and then you complete it with the marathon running. So that's an Ironman, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, what I wanted to talk about is so there are training regimes you can follow for all these, but typically what people say is it's good to do at least 70% of the final distance that you want to do. At least do it a couple of times or 3 times before you do it on the final event. So if you're aiming for 21 kilometer, it's good that if you are able to do probably 12 kilometers or 15 kilometers once or twice, of course not on consecutive days, but probably spaced out so that your body also gets enough rest. That gives you that sort of a realistic understanding of how your body feels. It's also about a lot of awareness, right? How's your body feeling? Like, how's your, are you facing some challenges with your calf muscles, with your quads? All these probably come up. So yeah, that's how I would think about it. So if I have to plan for the February one, I'll definitely try and do a 13 kilometer or a 15 kilometer, maybe a couple of times before that, just to see that I can do this, or my body is in the right shape to do it.
Yeah. This could be very stupid question as well, but see, why not? I mean, is it because 21 is too high that you are not aiming for 21 in the beginning itself?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
For example, let's say if we I play badminton once in a while. So if you have the stamina to play continuously for, let's say, 1 hour, definitely any half an hour match you'll be able to win, right? I mean,
yeah, I think winning will require, definitely you'll be able to do any half an hour match you'll be able to complete. Winning will probably require, depend on your opponent.
Yeah. But here you mentioned 70%, right? I mean, why not try for the 100% and practice that? Like, see, okay, so it's like right now you're doing 10, right? Let's say if in the next 6 months or, next 1 year, you reach this 21 thing and then you can continue be at 21, right? Is it because it's like too good to be true kind of an, target?
Good question. So I think, again, I'm not an expert at this, so my thinking might be very, very rudimentary, right? What I've heard from my friends who have trained for endurance events is that generally when you're training, you don't want to push yourself to that max. You only want to do it like to 70, 75, 80%. On the final day, your mind will take you there. So it's also a mind game. Your mind will take care of that remaining 20%, and with that, which is true, right? You will get it done. Only thing is you want a proof of concept, that proof that your body is in a reasonable shape to complete it. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Okay. And maybe that's also a record. And if we hit that 21, maybe it's like sort of like a record. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, in the endurance community, I think people look at personal bests, a lot. So, I think that's true. I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, that's also maybe another way to look at this.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So, open water swimming. Yeah, swimming for 21 hours, 21 kilometers, that's like close to 10 hours, right?
Yeah, 10 to 14 hours maybe. Depending on, that's true.
Yeah, you have to be super duper fit. We can't even think of, running for that much, right? Yeah. And what's the longest that you've run, by the way?
Good question. So I don't do much running. I don't do much cycling. I just do swimming.
Okay.
I've ran like 10 kilometers when I was in Bangalore. I've done a TCS 10K. It's a very common, or a very popular event in Bangalore, if I'm correct. But I just find this much more enjoyable for some reason. And of course, I play football also. So football plus swimming is what I really enjoy. Football and swimming is also a great combination, because after playing football, swimming is a great way to kind of relax your muscles and give it the much needed stretch and all that. So I find it very complimentary, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And so can you talk about a little bit about that, like the fact that you are also like coaching students, right, in football, right?
Yeah.
How did it get started? And also, you were, how did you get into football, like, and how did that transition into this coaching as well?
Sure. So I think in Kerala, most kids get a lot of exposure to football from very young age. And probably that happens in Kerala and maybe West Bengal. And same was the case with me. I think I was part of the school team, enjoyed playing football a lot. And then I didn't pursue football much in my college. I got involved in a lot of other activities. Like, I was part of the dance troupe of Bits Pilani, which took a lot of time. So, but very rewarding experience also, because of which I remember I couldn't audition myself for the football team and stuff like that. But after college, when I was in Bangalore, when I was working, I started playing again. And I started enjoying it a lot again. It was just, I just enjoy playing football. I started coaching when I volunteered to work with this organization called Just for Kicks as a coach. Just for Kicks is now part of Enabling Leadership. Enabling Leadership, their motivation was to help kids from a very underprivileged background, especially in government schools in Karnataka, to collaborate with those schools and provide them value-based, skill learning through football. How do you enable, maybe a 9-year-old boy or a 9-year-old girl to understand what honesty is in the form of a game, or understand what team spirit is, why you need to collaborate as a team, what are the benefits of it through in the form of a game. So that's what we used to do. We used to help them, educate them in these skills, and while doing that, we were also imparting value education. What is honesty? What is team spirit? How do you stand for the team? Why unity, being in a team and working towards together is much more valuable or effective than working individually towards something. Things like that. So that was like an amazing experience. I did it in 2017 when I was also running my first startup. And I just enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. The experience taught me a lot. I realized how bad I was as an educator, and at coaching. And it pushed me a lot to improve. And because it was football, which I really enjoyed, I started doing that with a lot of passion. That was a great experience. And when I came back to Kerala, I wanted to do something similar here. And that resulted in me, again, volunteering with a school which is very close to my home here in Aluva. It's called the Model Residential School. So I coach the junior team there. I coach the junior team football. Yeah, it's like, for me, that has also been a great experience. Again, same thing. We talked about how multidisciplinary exposure helps you. Teaching kids something pushes you to be very patient, be very articulate, be very prepared when you talk to them, when you educate them, and also be detached in a way, right? You can't control the outcome of a coaching session. You need to be detached, and you need to be able to kind of be vulnerable, and you need to let go at some time. You need to ensure it's not for your benefit, right? Your goal is to give them a great coaching outcome. So running an organization is not very different, I think. Enabling or working with your team members, helping them work towards their own personal or professional growth goals is also very similar. So being a coach, definitely, I think it has a lot of value. You will learn a lot of things which are relatable in your personal as well as your professional journey. I'll take a pause. Just give me a moment. Yeah, I would continue with that conversation now. I would like to give the example of Mr. Bill Campbell, right? Bill Campbell was the CEO of Intuit, and he started his journey as a baseball coach, and he was probably there's a book which is written about him, the $1 Trillion Coach. He has basically coached Steve Jobs, the founders of Google, and many other prolific entrepreneurs in the valley. And when you read that, you'll get to know Bill was a great role model when it comes to being very genuine, being very vulnerable. And it also talks about how he learned a lot of this in imparting education to kids in sports. So there are I think there are anecdotes like those which also gives me a lot of confidence that these kind of endeavors generally help you, and I'm just grateful that I find happiness in this, and I found it helping in other things that I do.
Okay. And a couple of 2-3 questions here. So one, is there any example share regarding Bill Campbell, wherein see what is the before, during, after version of, let's say, not Bill Gates, the Apple founder, or Steve Jobs, or the Google founders, before and after Bill Campbell? Is there something like that? I mean, or any striking story of before, during, after Bill Campbell?
Yeah. So Daniel, I don't recall any specific stories, but I would definitely urge our audience to check out this book called $1 Trillion Coach. It's a beautiful book. It's a very short book as well. It explains, it's basically a lot of anecdotes by different mentees of Bill Campbell, for whom Bill Campbell was a mentor. And it definitely will give you a perspective of how he shaped so many people's lives, and that way the outcome for a lot of important corporations today.
Yeah. And one more, which is from your own experience. You mentioned that you realized that you are a bad educator, and then you were able to consciously put some efforts and then become better at it. Any examples with the the students that you had, where you did, and then it didn't go the right way, then later you worked on it, and then now it worked, right? Any such examples?
Absolutely, there are so many examples. To save me the embarrassment, I'll probably share just one of them, which is very light-hearted. So every and I think that's how we all are molded, right, through our mistakes and failures. So one thing is, for every coaching session, you usually want to spend a lot of time planning something, and then you have in your mind that this is how it should transpire. This is how so we plan for drills. A drill is where probably with the ball or without the ball, we want the squad or the kids to basically do certain actions in a certain way, which will help them learn specific skill sets, right? Maybe it can be passing, it can be ball control, etc. So you plan all of this. You look at YouTube videos and find everything which is valuable. You plan this. Now when you go there and when you try doing it, you realize that it just doesn't work out the way you thought, and then that can lead to frustration. That can lead to you might be impatient. You're like come on, you'll be disappointed, and remember this, right? All these emotions at that time is not really helping anyone. It doesn't help, especially the kids. They feel demoralized when they see you feeling very dejected, or nodding your head and all that. But at the beginning, you go through all these motions, but later on you realize, whatever 2 hours of planning that I did for the football coaching session can totally backfire. Be prepared for that. Just go there, learn to be adaptable, see if that doesn't work, what are the kids picking up in that. Maybe just roll with that, and be okay with your plan not working at all, right? So all these were great lessons, I would say. So so many more things to share. I think it was these experiences kind of really inform your worldview, and how they kind of make you, right? Okay.
Now, one more here. So, from this experience of like becoming a better educator, is there something? I mean, what is it? Is there something that you will apply in your professional life or in your business? When
Absolutely.
you look at the team or coaching the team, etc.
Absolutely. I think when you work with a team, so it's also a reflection of team dynamics, right? How can you work with a team? How can you enable them with the freedom and flexibility, but also keep everyone responsible for the outcomes, which will collectively put us in a better position, maybe help us get to the goal that we are chasing, etc. Right? So uh, I think there's a beautiful way of doing it without micromanaging. There is a beautiful way of uh, giving that responsibility and accountability to someone. For a first-time entrepreneur, these things can be very difficult to understand and appreciate because you want control. In general, human beings are wired for control, right? We want control of our fate. We want to ensure that whatever we plan work out like that. We hate any disruptions in our planning. We become anxious. But I think a great leader in an organization is also a great demonstrator of this ability to let go, right? Surrender and just be vulnerable and be in a position to help your team members do the magic. Be responsible for what they have to deliver, and I've seen that happen. In my first startup as well. I'm really grateful for the amazing folks that I got to work with. But yeah, that's something which I learned in coaching as well, because kids really surprise you in a beautiful way sometimes. The way they come up with very innovative ways of doing certain things, you'll be like, wow. The only thing you got to do is write it down in your book so that you use it probably when you coach someone else. So that's what I would suggest or say, Daria.
Yeah. And one more question here. So, see, especially in in media, we see this the angry coach, or there are also multiple movies and everything, right? To motivate the team. The coach is very strict, right? And applies pressure, and this also happens in this Navy and everything, right? Army also, we have seen this very strict coaches. And then, of course, in the team performs, right? The under pressure. I mean, they don't break. I mean, they are like, there is this saying, right? Like, what that is born in the fire, it wouldn't melt in the shine, right? So, especially when you deal with students, how is that? Like, this angry coach versus friendly coach.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We can have a 2-hour conversation on this specific topic itself. So I'll try to cut it short. So definitely, I think there is a lot of value in being assertive as a coach or a leader, being very clear about how we want to get somewhere and being assertive. Assertive is the right word, right? And the best way to learn about all these things is to because I was also I'm close to football. I've read autobiographies of probably a lot of football coaches. Like there is Sir Alex Ferguson, there is Jose Mourinho, there is Pep Guardiola, Carlo Ancelotti. There are a lot of and Johan Cruyff. There are so many of these coaches who have written and shared their viewpoint when it comes to coaching. And I would think even there, before a coach becomes assertive and very demanding, they spend a lot of time in building a very personal connection with the players. The players trust the intent of a coach. Players trust the intent of a coach, that the coach's intent is also for their welfare. Because if a player does really, really well, that's gonna make a big difference in their own career, And the best coaches really, really have the players' welfare in their mind, and with that they become very assertive. Also, their style might be loud, it might be silent. Carlo Ancelotti has written this beautiful book called, I think it's called Silent Leadership. He talks about his style as a silent leader. So there are ways in which you can do this. I'm just checking if that is the name of the book. Quiet Leadership. Quiet Leadership is a book name. Whereas Sir Alex Ferguson was known to be a very loud, but one of the iconic coaches in the football world, right? Led Manchester United, for 25 seasons, won most of their seasons, etc. So the styles can be very different, but they win the players' hearts first. Players trust them, and I think that is very important. Now, when it comes to a context of coaching kids, you also need to know that kids can be very, very vulnerable. A lot of them might be there in their formative years. So you have to keep that and taking that into account, and you need to ensure that they feel safe and comfortable while working with you. That's very, very important. So yeah, so I wouldn't think we should take the right lessons from a very assertive coach or a very loud coach. That just shows that when players really trust the intent of a coach and really feel that the coach is doing everything to enable them, the players also reciprocate, regardless of whether it is loud or quiet.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question on this, wherein so see sports teams, right? And then then we have startups, right? There are like sort of maybe some similarities there, right?
Yeah.
Wherein of course startup is also playing to win,
Yeah.
right? And the sports teams as well, and team spirit, teamwork, all this comes into picture, right? And then we have the captain, we also have the the founders / the management also we have, right? And there are this we come across this news at times wherein Steve Jobs, he's very abusive, right? I mean, or he's like very demanding, right? And then he shouts at the team members, etc., right? And then we have these discussions wherein some founders are like that, wherein it's all about index, and wherein some other startups is all like very cool and everything. It's all the the exchange of information, everything, all the communication, the culture is much more friendly, right? So one is a very aggressive. It's not toxic, but aggressive, very competitive, heated debates. And that sort of culture, and another is much more friendly, diplomatic, that sort of culture, right? And it's not like only one of this work, right? Now taking in some cues from what you mentioned, so maybe if the management or the leadership has the trust of each and everyone, then maybe using that emotion as a force in order to drive the company or improve the effectiveness of the team can also work, is it?
Absolutely. I think you're right to say that. I think a startup team is very similar to a sports team, right? We chase very aggressive targets. We are in a very competitive environment, and it's important that we are able to work like a sports team. And I think all that matters, like you pointed out, is maybe at least in my thinking, it's that everyone is aligned and everyone knows what we are in for. A CEO knows what each person is in for, and we understand their intrinsic motivations. We enable them, we empower them, and they also express themselves. They learn through the process. I think that's very, very important. Probably I'm not a person to comment on what is the right style. Is it supposed to be very loud, or should it be the opposite of that? But like you pointed out, I think we have seen all styles work. And if there is no product market fit, there's no point in being very loud and very brash anyways. So we all have only certain amount of energy with us, so use it wisely, I would suggest. And I think, like I said, if you read that book called Quiet Leadership, it is one of the books that really fascinated me, because Carlo Ancelotti is I think the coach who has won the most number of Champions League titles. And Champions League title is like the title for the best European club in the world. Every year it happens, and then European clubs are the best, so you can arguably think of it as the best club in the world championship every year. And he does it with a quiet leadership. That's what he uses. So there are examples everywhere of how probably all sort of models work. But fundamentally, I think the trust and learning what each person is in for and enabling them, servant leadership. How do you serve them to do their best outcome? I think that matters a lot.
So this is pretty insightful in the sense that even we have heard of this concept of wartime CEO and everything, right? So when things heat up, of course, the way in which you operate should be different, because that time you be at peace, or you are very friendly, or everything is very diplomatic and all, maybe things wouldn't work out. But in situations like that, when you go from that peaceful person to the wartime person, only if you have the trust of the people, you can go as a team to the war. Yeah, so I think that is very important. Like basically the trust gives you the freedom to bring in your emotions, sort of.
Absolutely. So
Right.
it's the fundamental question I would ask to every CEO, including myself, to reflect on is: would you work for someone else if you don't trust them? Right? Would you spend 8 to 9 hours, probably every day, or probably more than that, for a cause if you don't trust their intent?
Yeah.
Maybe you won't. And then why would you want to do that? Why do you expect others to do that? It's a very simple question, I think.
Yeah.
So that's at the core of it, right? That camaraderie you need to build.
Yeah.
You need to be genuine, be vulnerable, is what I believe.
Yeah. Even that 70 hours, right? That 70 hours. So it's like, see, what's in it for them, right? What's in it for that team member? How it is aligned with their, goals and scheme of things. And if it's in it for them, and if they have the trust, then, trust with the company, with the leader, then why not? And if it's aligned with their own goals, then why not, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, then it's no more about, toxic versus, it's not about the toxicity. It's more like, okay, what I'm doing, is it aligned with my own things? And do I trust this person or this company to, contribute?
Absolutely. I think the why matters a lot. I would think if you are spending that 70 hours doing some of the things that are pushing you intellectually very, very well, that you're enjoying it, that can be amazing, right? You will also enjoy it. You're not talking about your health in jeopardy. You still have time to take care of your health, but you are really, really engaging yourself in probably your life's work. That can be entirely different from how someone who doesn't want to work on something, or who finds the culture very toxic, who has to go to the office and then clock 70 hours. So both, we should probably also look at these statements in the right context, I think. That's how I would look at it. So at the core of it, it's important to see how you can enable a team, and a team is required for you to win. So one thing I learned in football is that even if you have 3 or 4 superstars, if you are not into this as a team, if you can't trust each other, for example, if you can't trust the person, let's say if I'm the center back, or let's say I'm a midfielder, a central midfielder, if I can't trust to pass the ball to a left midfielder, my avenues of creating interesting opportunity or doing interesting things in the field it's cut down massively. I can't use that space because I'm not trusting. I'll probably only use my right wing. So it's important to build that trust, be forgiving, give. So in startup and in football, wherever you are, it's important to start with a very, very high trust reservoir. Start with a very, very good amount of trust and play with it, I think. And then you need to definitely work towards that trust and respect reservoir as well. That's something I really hope. That I think is very important. Yeah, you need that team to deliver. You need each and every person to play their role. It's not a one man show, right? It's a team that has to come out there and deliver. So it's important that everyone understands what we are in for, and do their best, and that way explore a better self of themselves. That's how I think about it.
Sure. We'll just pause. So how is it going?
I think it's good. You probably have this nature of talking like this. So I don't know if I'm talking too much. You will have seen a lot of podcasts, right? So like you can give me feedback if it is. Otherwise, I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, see, so far we spoke about open water swimming, and then football, which is mostly into the sports side of things. And culinary part, should we talk about it, or should we? So I was thinking like, okay, see, we spoke about swimming, we spoke about football, and one more which is on the doing side of things is, or the action side of things, physical side of things is culinary part, right? So we'll talk about that. I mean, should we talk about it? We'll talk about it, right?
We can quickly go through that. Maybe we won't spend much time. Actually, Kalaripaita, we can talk about Kalaripaita maybe after books. So that can be an entry point to Discomfort. Why do you do this?
Okay.
About football, maybe I can just talk about the Karl Popper, the communication bit a little, and then we can get to we can go to the reading and the 52 books and experiment, and then Kalaripaita, and then Discomfort. That's okay.
Okay, so I'll just okay. So let's start. Huh? Great, Matthew. So far, what we discussed is mostly about sports and your interest in sports, which is more of the the doing side of things, the physical side of the things, which is open water swimming, and also you play football and also you serving as a football coach as well. And what I've also noticed is that you are also big time into reading as well. So you mentioned a lot of books here as well. And can you also just talk a little bit about what is reading for you? Like what sort of books you read? How do you approach it, and why do you do that as well?
Yeah, sure. I think you got it right. I think reading is probably the single most important channel through which I learn things. And I try to spend a good amount of time reading. That's how I acquire a lot of perspectives. And my simple way to think about reading is this, right? Let's say a psychology professor in Stanford or a computer science professor in Stanford who has got some amazing things to share, who is also a great teacher. They are putting, let's say, thousands of hours into putting together their work, their seminal work, into a book, which means that there is a lot of thought put into it. And now they're publishing it so that people like me can buy it and read it. That's fantastic, right? That's like knowledge democratized in some way. And I've seen it over and over. I think a lot of my life philosophies I've understood and explored them through reading. So we talked about range. Another philosophy I embrace a lot in my life is growth mindset, which was again a seminal work by Dr. Carol Dweck, who is a psychology professor in Stanford. So many other things which I've embraced in my life, and been very fortunate to do that, has been through books. So yeah, that has definitely helped me a lot, and I find that as a channel of acquisition working very well for me. For someone else, it could be something else. It could be listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos. It can be anything. But I think having that awareness of what works for you to learn more and acquire that knowledge, that helps. For me, that has been books. I've been very grateful for that.
So, and see, these days especially, right, there are a lot of books. And unlike, let's say, 10 years before, the number of books which are also available. And then, as you rightly said, right, like someone puts lots of hours, hundreds of hours into it, and it's sort of like their life's work, right?
Yeah.
It's like all the wisdom from that person condensed, coming in the book, right? But these days, due to social media and creator economy and everything, there are a lot of books which are also like sort of like fluffy books, and which there are books written just because the title could be a bestseller, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you select what sort of books? Do you read fiction and non-fiction, and how do you come across books, or how do you choose which book to read?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do follow, let's say, a certain methodology there, not like a set methodology, but I do have my own ways of doing it. So first, by the way, I read fiction too. I just happen to read more non-fiction. But the last book I read was this fiction called The Covenant of Water. It's a Kerala about, in and around Kerala. A story in and around Kerala, which is written by Dr. Abraham Verghese. It's an amazing book. It's something I recommend folks to read to get a hang of what 1900s Kerala was like. But yeah, going back to the topic, you are right. I think the depth that is captured in different books can vary a lot. I usually try to look for books which have some first principle understanding that I can take home. For example, Thinking Fast and Slow was a seminal book by Dr. Daniel Kahneman, which talks about human biases. And it also goes into good detail about what are the type of biases, what sort of studies have been done to understand these biases and uncover them. There is also a book series by late Dr. Clayton Christensen about what disruption means. There is a book called Innovators Dilemma, Innovator Solution. Again, very, very first principles, right, in nature, at least. So those are the kind of books I try to read because they are very, very, they teach you something very fundamental on which you can build your thinking. So I try to go for those kind of books. otherwise I try to pick books which are written by folks who have spent maybe their life doing it, right? Maybe 20 years doing it, 25 years doing it. Recently, I came across a book called Burn, B-U-R-N. It's a book that talks about how metabolism works in your body. You know, how do you burn calories, for example? And I found it very, very valuable because I know the author has spent 20-25 years of his career understanding how metabolism works in primates, human beings, etc. So that kind of thought leadership and domain understanding is what kind of transpires in that. I can see it. So, so either it can, very, very fundamental first principles, or something where the author has spent a lot of time and effort, their life in that career, in that space. That helps a lot. And I think you do, with time, you understand how to pick up these kind of books as well. It's not just these. Sometimes if you want to just learn about a domain, maybe you want to pick something very, very small, very easy to understand. So there are books like those as well. Again, I've seen that I gravitate a lot towards psychology and history, because history also, again, a good accounting of history is a great book to learn or read, because you see how human patterns kind of arise, right? You see similar things happening in different parts of the world. You're able to understand how human beings operate, basically. Psychology, because I think I really, really fascinated by that subject, to the point that I also did after my college, I went and did a distance learning program with Indira Gandhi National Open University. So I did a MA psychology with them. I was really fascinated. That was also a great experiment for me to understand how distance learning works in India. It was a great experience, very grateful for that. But psychology is something I really enjoy, and I like reading psychology. So there also you'll find a lot of authors who write first principle books, So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's helpful if someone is up for building their fundamental understanding of a subject. It's helpful to be very conscious of what sort of books you want to read. And I think internet is a great place to understand what books are really good from that perspective, and what books are probably very how to, or 5 ways to become productive sort of books. That might, 5 ways to become productive, you don't probably need a book. You probably need just a blog post for that, maybe. I know I'm probably simplifying it too much here, but yeah, so those are the ways I look at it. I think everyone probably figures out their own ways of choosing the right books which they enjoy, and it's an iterative process. You just follow the process and keep going.
Yeah. And do you so do you apply some methods in order to read fast, and so one is about like reading faster. That's one part. Second is accumulating this knowledge, right, in terms of taking notes or something. And so and even see Naval Ravikant, right, he has said see, all you need is, for him at least, he's like, see, all I need is 100 books which I'll read again and again in life. I don't need more than that, right? And for me, see, my hobby is not reading, but these days my hobby is buying books. Yeah, not reading, but just buy collecting time, one page by one page, something like that. So the question is, is it more speed for you, or is it like, I'll spend maybe a couple of months with a book, or are you more like, no, let me read a book in a week, right? So what is, how do you look at it? And
so I think I've tried.
Any techniques, any reading techniques that you employ for this greater assimilation of the information, faster and effective in an effective way? Any tips there?
Sure. So forced functions are always good, I think, at least to experiment if it works for you. Forced function is where you do certain thing to push yourself to complete an action, right? For example, if you tell your family that, hey, I'm gonna run a marathon this year, then you are probably putting yourself in a position where your family will come and ask you, hey, what happened? That marathon is coming, right? Then it'll push you to actually work towards it. For example, those are forced functions, right? To simply put. I'm active on this platform called Goodreads. So Goodreads.com, now acquired by Amazon. It basically lets you decide, or on a book reading challenge at the beginning of the year, you can just tell, hey, these many books I'm committing to read. So probably maybe 8-9 years back when I started getting into reading a lot more consciously. That's the point when I understood that this is really helping me learn things, and this is really working for me. Like I said, for everyone it might be a different channel, but for me, I realized book reading is really helping me a lot. So then I started using that as a post function. I remember in 2018 or 2017, I've got to check. I wrote a blog post about this where I committed to read 52 books that year. So that is a book a week. A book a week is very hard. I can share my perspective. It's very hard because you need to really plan for it. If you're reading a very long book, it can take you a while, and all of this while doing a startup. So you also need to be very conscious of the time you spend on anything else that you do other than your startup also, right? So at least that definitely that was also something to be kept in mind. And so that has helped. I completed 52 books. I've shared my experiences also in a blog post about that. I think you can just maybe Google 52 books a week, Matthew John. I think you'll come across a Medium article. So there I had to very consciously keep time for reading. I remember I used to keep like a 1 hour time slotted for reading. I'll just make sure that I keep that time for reading because it was very intentional and conscious. Now I don't do that because it's not a competition. You're not competing with anyone. You need to do it at your comfort, considering all the other complexities you deal with in your life. So otherwise, I think by now I don't really look at how many books I read in a year or anything. I probably try to finish like 20 books, maybe 25-30 books sometimes. But yeah, if you have found it working for you, no harm in using forced functions as a way to push yourself to do it more. Coming to note taking, I read probably 95-98% of the books on Kindle. I find it very useful. It's for my liking. In Kindle you can take notes. But the reality is you probably don't go back to those notes very often. But what I also try to do is if I find anything interesting which come up, where I'm able to relate it with some other idea which I would have read in another book entirely, I try to keep note of these points. For that I use a method called Zettelkasten. It's a great way to do note taking, and you can do it on any note taking app of your choice today. Again, Zettelkasten was also introduced to me by another book called How to Take Smart Notes, which talks about Zettelkasten in good detail. So I try to use that. Whenever I get an idea, I just put an entry. I try to see what I can correlate with in whatever other points I've put together before, and see if that can transpire into writing. It can be a blog post, a prose, etc. That exercise is also mentally challenging. It exercises your mental muscles, your brain, to put together these thoughts. It also makes you vulnerable. You share those thoughts with someone, and maybe people appreciate it, maybe people don't relate with it. That's fine. You still learn from the entire experience.
Okay. How's this Zettelkasten method? Like, if you have to explain, is it possible to explain it simply? Like,
so Zettelkasten, let me see if I can share something with you. Mine is not a pure Zettelkasten, but Zettelkasten is more like, think of it like physically you can think of it like a cupboard in which you stack notes, and these notes are stacked with some way you can sort, right? It can be by maybe your recency, it can be by alphabetical order, etc. So let's say if I want to write something about about extractive economies versus inclusive economies. So this is something I learned in this book called Why Nations Fail. If I want to write something about that, I'll probably put a note extractive versus inclusive economies, right? And then I'll probably share a little bit of notes, and I'll also see which I wrote before can be related to this. Maybe I'll realize that this has something to do with an economics topic I had mentioned in another book. So I'll just leave that note here. You can in today's world, you can leave it as a symbolic link. You can just put the link to that particular note in this sheet, and that's how you can build it. So when you finally want to write about it, you have that original thought. You also have ways of connecting it with 5 other thoughts maybe. I'm giving you the ideal picture. It seldom comes out like this for me because I'm not a great Zettelkasten practitioner. I'm still learning in the process. So, but you've built like a very interesting, valuable, let's say, thought chain. Yeah, would that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like a collection of, as you mentioned, collection of thought chains or like related notes. So that, let's say, best way to read a book, if I search that in my notes, then I'll be able to find all the related notes which I've made on this pillar, something like that, right?
That's true. So, for example, so I've at least one thing I've been consciously trying to do is I'll try to at least put together the points. Whenever I come across an idea, I'll just write it down as a small note, and I try to use tags. So if I write something with, let's say, economics written, then I can look at what are the other economic points I've put together. Then I can see, is there a way to creatively connect these two? Is it coming very intuitively, or is it, looking very forced? So that's a way to use it. But again, I'm also discovering this process. I'm also finding out how to do this in the right way. But you can see that this is my it's the sheet is still loading, but this is how I collect thoughts which could translate into a writing later, or even for my own personal reference, if I can use it for maybe appreciating what I learned, things like that.
Okay. And while we are at it, in these days, of course, see, reading is all about learning, right? And it's all about capturing that knowledge which is out there. And writing these days, it's more of one, expressing yourself, communicating your ideas and communicating the knowledge that you have, and also in terms of marketing yourself as well, right? So how do you look at writing, and again, any methodologies you adopt to becoming a better writer? What do you do there?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I am not the best person to share here because I have not been a very prolific writer in the first place. I am really terrible at marketing myself. So I think mostly I write for the enjoyment of sharing something which I have learned, which I feel like sharing. I probably sometimes share it on LinkedIn. Sometimes I have a Substack called Nuances, nuances.substack.com. I write there. So probably I'm not the right person to talk about how to become a prolific writer or build your own, let's say, followership, etc. But writing for me is a way to push yourself to get into that state of discomfort, because you've learned something, but you're also now putting yourself in a position where I'm telling that, hey, I'm now going to share this, what I've learned, and that way you're being vulnerable, right? Your writing can get, people might not perceive it as valuable, can be attacked, or whatever it is, or people might not find it very valuable. All these are there. All these possibilities are there. Yeah.
So do you write for yourself or do you write for the world?
I really don't know, Daniel. I think if people like my writing and if they find it valuable, I think I'll feel very happy about it. But definitely I'm not there yet. So today what motivates me to write is writing also teaches you a concept much better. You read, you learn, you write, you get much better at it. You teach, you become much better at it, right? I think Richard Feynman, paraphrasing one of the things which he mentioned was this: how do you learn something much better? So similarly, I find writing as a pursuit of that, and I want to learn to write better. Thankful to a lot of friends in my life who have who have reviewed my whatever I write and then share feedback so that I can get better.
Yeah. And then just for the viewers, so see, even though Matthew mentioned that he's not a prolific writer, so see, he's one of the, again, as I mentioned, intentional writers. I've come across, what he has written in terms of, LinkedIn posts, then, the kind of, presentations which he's, making, etc. So it's very intentional, and there is, you can see that there is efforts, which has gone into it. So it's from, that perspective, we are looking at it. So again, Matthew, so how do you, so you mentioned that, see, you're not sure whether you're writing it for yourself. Of course, it's part of learning, but at the same time, you'll be happy when others find value in it. But if you have to write about, let's say, something, right? How are you thinking about it? Like, are you trying to capture, are you thinking of, how do you package in a way in which it is interesting for the audience to read? Are you looking at from that point, or are you more looking like, okay, what is the best way in which I can communicate this better?
Got it. I think I would think of it as, in general, my tendency is to look at, or it's about being honest with what is your point of view. What is that you want to share with the people? Every book out there can be thought of as a point of view. The author takes a point of view and shares it. It might be truth, it might not be truth, but it's a point of view.
Okay.
So similarly in writing, I think it's important to share a point of view and then submit it to the audience and ask them to check if they are able to relate with it, they are not able to relate with it, etc. That's how I think about it. So if I've read something in history, in how nations are built, and if I'm trying to write something which correlates that with how startups are built, mostly it'll be a point of view. It won't be, let's say, hey, I read this is 2 or 5 points I learned from it. It won't be a recap, it won't be a summary. I'll try to share point of views because that's what I found interesting in the writing that I've done so far. Like I said, I'm also learning this process, so maybe tomorrow I might look at other formats of writing. But point of view is what I focus on. So point of view is very important because in most things in your life, you will probably need a point of view, right? Your startup needs a point of view. You need a thesis. You need to believe in a certain way in which things operate and becomes much more useful for your audience, for example. So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And similar to the note-taking method that you are using, I mean, any tools or frameworks, anything that you use. So this point of view, sharing the point of view, that's a very good thumb rule to have. I mean, or that's what you are working on. Any other frameworks / tools that you use in order to make your writing better?
I think one way to think about it is, this is something I would recommend everyone to check is what is storytelling, right? Because I think stories, human beings we are always fascinated by stories, right? We can just sit and watch movies day in, day out sometimes. We all love stories. And now you can check out what is a storytelling arc. Most of the stories that you have seen, mostly it'll all follow a very similar pattern. It's you can call it a arc. There's a beginning, then there is a rising action, then there is a middle to the story, then there is a falling action, and finally there's a resolution. And there are books which also explain this in good detail. One book which I read some time back is this book called The Storytelling Animal, which I found very interesting. It at least convinces you that why stories are important. So if you want to write, learn about stories, learn about storytelling. How can you tell a story? What are the components of storytelling? Look at it as a science, not just as an art. Because once you look at it as a science, you will also understand how there are pieces of storytelling which is very common in maybe the way Nolan says a story or Tarantino says a story. So that's something I would urge folks to look at. How does storytelling works?
Got it. So as far as writing is concerned, so you are point of view that will bring the best. These are the two things. Cool. All right, so we covered some aspects which is on the the action side of things, which is the football coach, then the swimming part, and this is more on the thinking side, right, which is the reading and the writing part. As we discussed in the beginning, so you are pursuing multiple interests, and so if I have to ask you, of course, see the cross-functional application of the knowledge, that is one part of it. And but on a high level, if we look at it, these are also very difficult, some of this, right? Especially the swimming in the ocean, and that's very difficult and challenging, right? So what why do you, I mean, there is nothing like you see, first of all, doing a startup itself is challenging enough. So why do you pursue that apart from this aspect of course, cross-functional learning?
That's a good question. I think so if you ask a founder why do they start up, of course you get answers like financial independence, a good financial outcome, or freedom, etc. But one intrinsic value which a lot of them appreciate is also the learning growth curve, right? you just learn a lot of things at a short time span. Your learning is on an overdrive, right? And what I have noticed is when you put yourself in a place of discomfort, that's when you learn a lot. When you consciously put yourself in a place where you need to really feel internally, oh man, this is so hard. Why is it so hard? Or this is embarrassing for me, or this is painful for me, or I've not been here before. It's alien to me. It's also places where you uncover new perspectives. It's a place where you learn a lot. Maybe when you travel, when you backpack and travel, when you use tent for the first time, and then and spend your maybe a couple of weeks frugally somewhere, staying in another country where you don't know the language. All these are spaces of discomfort, but they teach you a lot. And startup is also the ultimate learning experience that way, right? It's a massive take on a market. Like we discussed how it's very similar to the ocean. It's not at all going to listen to you. So I think that's probably one philosophy I try to pursue in life, which is pursue discomfort. I'll give a couple of instances for just to give, because startup is something which everyone can relate with, but I also wanted to maybe share something how I think about it, right? So the last 1 year, I have consciously tried to spend time taking a break, and before pursuing my second journey, I wanted to take a little bit of a break. And one thing I experienced is Kalaripaita. So Kalaripaita is a ancient martial art form in Kerala. Basically, I just wait for the train to go.
Yeah. So you can just maybe replay the video. I will start the screen sharing once again. Replaying the video. Pause the screen sharing. Yeah. So go ahead. You can.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, you can start with saying, okay, maybe I'll share a couple of instances.
Yeah. So I'll share a couple of instances in my own journey in the last 1 year, 12 months, where I pushed myself to a space of discomfort, and which I'm very thankful for. So one was I wanted to learn Kalaripaita. Kalaripaita is a ancient martial art form, from Kerala itself, which requires you. It's like a classical art form. It requires you to really be committed and give a lot of time. At 4:30 a.m. in the morning, you go to a place where you practice it. That is called the Kalari, and you have a guru shishya relationship, but a very stringent one at it. So that's something which I went for it for 3 months. I learned. It was probably like I just only experienced a few drops of the ocean, I would say. You can learn Kalari for decades. But this pushed me to learn something very new, which has always been in my mind, etc. So Kalari is one thing. And I was also fortunate to learn free diving. Free diving is this idea of one breath hold underwater diving, right? Unlike what you do with a scuba where you have oxygen cylinders, you just go take one breath hold and then go dive underneath the water. This is in Philippines, and again, a beautiful experience, right? I had to live there for a couple of weeks with a crew. I carried my tent with me. We all cooked food together, and it was a great opportunity for me to understand the Filipino culture, being with the people there, who were amazing, by the way. So all these have a lot of elements of discomfort to pursue, but at the end of it, you learn something very interesting. They come home a much more enriched person, understanding a lot more perspectives you might be able to use in your life, might not be able to. But for me, like I said, that just floats my boat. So I'm grateful for that. So I wanted to share this with you to give you a perspective of that pursuit of discomfort, right? I think that is when I think you learn the most. And if a human being is able to unlock your ability to pursue that discomfort, in something, it can be running a startup. It's a great way to pursue discomfort. That's how I think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, it's like at any given point of time, you will have something which is of discomfort that you're pursuing, and that keeps you feel the heartbeat better, right? Feel life better, is it?
Yeah, I think you are so good at explaining things which are very difficult to explain. I think you mentioned it the right way. I think that's exactly what it is. I think, right now I'm getting started with the second startup journey, which is going to be a very exciting learning curve, but also a journey of discomfort for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. Nice. All the best, with that.
Thank you.
From there, compared to your first startup, now that you are looking to start your second one, what are some of the things that you'll be doing differently? And with all these experiences from multiple areas, also interests also coming into picture, right? How will you do things differently this time?
Sure. I think there are two things I'll focus on. The first one is I'll try my best to take myself less seriously. I'll try to not worry too much about what I think, what my idea is, or my way of building the product is. I think ego is a deterrent in most of these journeys. Grateful for the first journey where I got to learn a lot of things, some of them painful. But yeah, that's one thing I'll definitely try to do. Take myself less seriously. See how it can be a much more of a collaborative journey with a lot of stakeholders, and how we can all combine together to do something meaningful and valuable.
Yeah.
The second aspect would be to get much better at experimenting. I think everything is an experiment in a startup journey, in life as well. You start with a hypothesis and you want to validate and see if it is right or wrong. And time you get better at conducting experiments, but they are going to be experiments nevertheless. You might find that your primary assumption or hypothesis in your startup is not working well, but if you conduct it well, you will learn things in the periphery, probably on the adjacency, and then you'll be able to pivot meaningfully. But all of this will only work if you are learning, if you are able to experiment well. I think I've gotten better at experimentation, I think, thanks to my first journey and all these experiences. So that is the second part. I think I'll want to experiment much better, dispassionate, but also engaged, to the cause. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So less take yourself less seriously and more experiments, right?
Yeah. Get better at experimenting. Yeah.
Awesome. So so this is great, Matthew. So just to summarize, so we discussed about
Can I share something? Did you want to also cover the? Do you also want to cover the note taking, the Excel sheet?
Yeah. So how do we bring that?
How do we bring that? Good question. So I think after discomfort, maybe we can also talk about how do you push yourself to pursue discomfort. And there I can just talk about, this is a method I am trying to follow.
We just now discussed about the startup, right?
But that's an independent module, so we can keep it towards the end.
Okay. So you're saying, okay.
Any methods you pursue to ensure that you follow discomfort when you pursue these multiple things.
Yeah.
That's one way.
Yeah. So and on this pursuit of discomfort as well, any framework or any tools, etc., that you use to ensure you are that is more effective, right?
Got it. That's a good question. I think so interestingly, what I've seen, what works or helps you a lot in this journey when you're pursuing discomfort is that awareness of how you are making progress, or how are you doing on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
I've tried following something on this front. I started it last year. So let me probably share my screen. Yeah. So I call this the daily check-in. On a daily basis, I'll just look back at how I'm doing, right? It's more of a self-observation. Okay. So and last year when I just started doing it, the idea was to just look at how are you doing on a daily basis? Is it great? Is it good? Is it above average? Is it average, below average, bad or awful? So this is how my last year looked like, when I try to do that self-observation. And so this year, what I started doing is I improvised a little bit on this. So by the way, the credits for this has to go to a very thoughtful Reddit user who shared their daily check-in or life in a year sort of a map, and telling that this is something they did.
Okay.
My wife and I, we saw this and we thought we would also try this. And that's how we started doing it for last year, 2022. So this year I improvised a little bit. I think I wanted to do the daily check-in, but I also wanted to put in things which I want to try and pursue, more consistently. But it might not be easy. There will be an element of discomfort. So, for example, earlier this year, I was very fortunate to go for a 10-day Vipassana course. And after that, I've been trying to check how am I doing on a daily Vipassana, streak. Not more than a streak. How am I doing? Am I able to practice it on a daily basis? So the orange will be like no meditation done. Yellow, that's up to 30 minutes. Green would be 30 minutes to 1 hour. So I try to do this on a daily basis. Sometimes I miss out on doing it on a daily basis. Probably a few days and I'll probably need to fill up together. But doesn't matter. The idea is, can you be true to yourself using some mechanism like this? So for me, it's not just daily check-in and Vipassana. I try to also use it for other things I pursue where there is definitely a fair amount of discomfort. For example, coding is something I'm trying to get back to. I started my career as a coder, but I never got to stay with coding for enough time that I embrace it as a creative and meditative pursuit. So I wanted to confront that and explore coding in good detail. So as you can see, most of the days I couldn't do much about it, but I still try to note it down. Learning AI, learning about how deep learning works, etc., is something I started doing this year. So there also I try to observe myself. How am I doing? Again, here we talked about books and we talked about pedagogy a little bit, about the different ways of teaching. One of the teachers I found really, really amazing in the AI front is the creator of Fast.ai, Jeremy Howard. I will certainly urge our audience to check his work out, Fast.ai, if at all they want to pursue AI learning. So things like that. I also look at writing. These are areas of discomfort. It doesn't come very naturally to me. I need to put effort. You will notice that reading is not here because reading comes more naturally to me. Acquiring knowledge through reading is more natural. So here you can find things which are not very natural. So I try to spend time on this. Again, as you can see, most of the days, very little activity or no activity. But that's okay. I'll try to learn to be forgiving to self. But it's important to stay true and put it down somewhere. And the last one is something which is a little more meta. It's about, are you in a zone of discomfort or are you really, really, really comfortable? So even we talked about discomfort, but as you can see, most of the days I rate myself as in a very comfortable zone. Some days cause some discomfort. Some days it's way outside discomfort. So that's so these are things which kind of push me to think about how I am doing. And again, this is just my method. Whatever floats your boat, right? Whatever works for each one of you, you should ideally try that. But I thought it would be helpful to share.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting way to do the check-ins and also remind yourself and keep yourself accountable. That's pretty interesting. I was just going through your blog and I just came across this. But good that you shared this in much more detail. Great. So as we reach towards the the final part of the episode, right? I mean, any other quick thoughts or ideas that you wanted to share with our viewers?
That's a good one. Nothing. If we just think about this a little.
Maybe some rapid fire sort of questions. Don't think too much, but so one is, if you're planning for your second startup, it's going to be bootstrapped or funded?
I haven't put much thought into it. I think whatever works the best for that thesis and what that thesis demands, I think I'll be open to doing that. That's how I think about it.
And remote team or in-office team?
I've done both, seen the benefits of both. We'll again evaluate how the team kind of evolves. But I think either way, I think I'll be able to manage decently, I believe.
Okay. One movie that you recommend or you love?
Okay. So I love this movie called The Last Samurai. It's a Tom Cruise movie. That's something I love. There is a scene in that movie where he'll be learning a stick fight from it's all raining, and he'll be learning stick fight from kids in a camp where everyone kind of antagonizes him. Everyone, because he's actually a hostage there, but he's learning, having fun time with the kids there in a Japanese community, samurai community, and then it's a good scene which shows his tenacity or resilience or not give up attitude. I find a lot of inspiration in that particular scene. I just love it. I think maybe I'll share the link to that scene maybe sometime, and then that's something I like, the movie and that scene in particular. Find a lot of correlation or similarity in what my startup journey and in general the pursuit of discomfort has been like. You don't give up, you just keep at it, and it's fun. It gets better with time.
All right. So that's Matthew for us, everyone. So pursuit of multiple interests, pursuit of discomfort, and and all the best for your next startup, Matthew. Hope to post you after some time again.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Daniel. I really enjoyed speaking. I think I spoke a lot. Maybe some of it was not very mindful. And then like I pointed out, these are all truths in my life at this point of time. A lot of it probably is bound to change. Please take everything with that sort of a reality. And we are all in our own journeys, exploring and rediscovering ourselves. Wishing all of you the very best as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks very much. Cheers.